All right. Feeney Talks with Friends, episode 53. Got a great guest here today. What's up, Brad?
How are you, Eric?
How's everything? This is going to be great. I'm very excited for this podcast. My name is Eric Feeney, founder and president of Friends of Feeney. Our mission is to help children and families that have heartbreak or tragedy. I use this podcast, Feeney Talks with Friends, and I talk to wonderful people in the community that are doing great things. And I'm all thanks to Weehaw Roasting and Brewing on 141 Shield Street. Thank you, Cody, and thank you, Andy. Thank you, Owen and Dave from Direct Line Media. None of this would be possible without them. We just had a huge 50th celebration at the park, Playhouse on Park. Again, I want to thank my sponsors, Donut Crazy, Gastro Park, West Hartford Lock, Keating Agency, and the Fix IV. And shout out to Ronald Harris, who was at episode 52. He's with the Traffic Advertising Network. Great podcast. We did it in the back, in the garage, in front of his truck. So he pulled up his truck. He has a huge screen. He puts on advertisements, and he drives up 84 and 91. Pretty cool. You ever see him?
I think I have, but I didn't know it was him.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So let me just get this straight, Eric. I'm your 53rd favorite person. I mean, I'm not sure how do I feel about that.
I know. Sorry, Brad.
Top 50, I'd probably feel a little bit better. Now, what do you do? Say, well, I'm top 100. It doesn't sound that good. Do you even know more than 100 people?
No.
All right, so I'm in the bottom half of your people.
Yeah.
51 through 100 is the bottom half. I'm not going to let that affect my mood.
No, not at all. No offense. I'm just happy that you're here.
I am too.
You've been a good friend for quite some time. You're an awesome person. Thanks for coming on.
I'm
Number
happy
53.
to be here.
You're my 53 bestest friend.
Thank you.
How you been?
Great. Life is good. I feel very, very fortunate. My family is happy and healthy. I've had a couple career changes over the last few years that have landed me in a great spot, doing work not terribly dissimilar to what you're trying to do with Friends of Feeney. And I think that's part of the reason why you and I bumped into each other and we started talking about it. And you thought, hey, why don't I come on and talk to you? I think what you really meant was you should have been in the first 10, but I just lost track of time.
Exactly. You were definitely on my top 10 list. And we randomly saw each other at Dick's Sporting's Goods. And, I was like, hey, what's up, Brad? How's everything? So I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
And fundraising, right? You're the vice president.
So I'm vice president of communications and marketing at the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. So people hear Hartford Foundation, the first thing most of the people in Greater Hartford think of is the Hartford Insurance Company. It's not the Hartford Insurance Company. They do a lot of great community work. We are a community foundation. So there are community foundations all over the country. They're geographically based philanthropic organizations. So you've heard of the Gates Foundation. Mm-hmm. You've heard of the Ford Foundation, the Knight Foundation. These are private family foundations that have really significant wealth behind them. Named Ford, you figure where they got their money from. You know where Bill and Melinda Gates got their money from. So we work as a funder, not so different from them, although the amount of funds that we have are slightly less. But community foundations are geographically bound. So we are the community foundation for Hartford and 28 surrounding communities. So Greater Hartford, more or less. Mm-hmm. And we fund the nonprofits in Greater Hartford. And it's great work. So my job as a communications guy and a marketing guy is to talk about our work in community, to try to raise the profile of some of the nonprofits that are doing amazing work to make people's lives better in Hartford and the surrounding towns. And we fund them. And so to raise their profile and also to attract potential donors into our work. So if you think about a funder, you've probably seen Bill Gates do interviews on TV.
Yep.
He's got this amazing 30,000-foot view of the issues that, at least in his mind, are front and center in America and around the world. And he and Melinda and other philanthropists who are very thoughtful are trying to connect a lot of the dots. So if you think about that on a smaller scale, in Greater Hartford with about 800,000 people in 29 towns, we're trying to look at the landscape and look at what are the issues that are really barriers to opportunity for people and families in our community. And so we will fund things like basic human needs, food pantries, mental and physical health, opportunities for secure housing and better housing for renters and potentially even from home ownership. Things like arts and culture to improve the lives of people in community. So that's kind of an example. So that's a very long answer to a question of, you're the what at the Hartford Foundation? So I have the pleasure and the privilege to be able to be the one who's in charge of like telling the stories of all the good work that people in the community are doing, and that my colleagues are doing to try to connect some of the dots and get some of these amazing nonprofits, in many cases, to work together with young people, as an example, that are struggling for, particularly people of color in our community, that may not have access to some of the opportunities for a pipeline to employment, for higher education, and what's happening there. And is it about the individual? Is it about the family? Or is it about all the other things in their life that are barriers to them being successful in school? I'm guessing you encounter this at school too, right? So a kid in your class who's struggling, acting out a little bit, not paying attention. On first blush, if somebody were looking at, oh, that kid's just not on the ball. Well, maybe that kid has a problem at home. Maybe that kid is in a situation where they're struggling to have 3 solid meals every day. Maybe that kid is being taken care of by like a 12 or 13-year-old older sibling when they get off the bus, and that's hard. It's hard. So when you work for an organization that has like that 30,000-foot view, so you don't just diagnose a problem by the first thing you see, you get deeper and try to understand what are the effects that could be having an impact on why a particular kid isn't finding success in school. Because as you know, as an educator, that's the first step to success in life, is to be able to just make it through and find the things that light those light bulbs in a kid's head, and who knows what it's going to be.
Yep. No, I like that. There's always, it's never the kid's fault. Never the kid's fault.
It isn't.
Especially in elementary school. So I've seen it, and we just try to help, clear the path and give them equal opportunity and some, learning experiences. I try to make sure my class is free to make mistakes, comfortable to ask questions, and and kids are happy to come every day, like truancy issues. You don't say, hey, where were you yesterday? You say, I'm so glad you are here today. I missed you yesterday. Just like words matter.
Words definitely matter.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we talk about, in particular in philanthropy, but also in nonprofit work, is the idea of asset framing, rather than talking about particularly a young person, but any people that have been somehow disenfranchised from opportunity, to not talk about the things that they don't have and define them by the things that they don't have. So to your point, why weren't you here yesterday, is not as constructive as, we really missed you yesterday. It's so good to see you today. Like, think about receiving those two different messages.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
crystal clear, right?
Exactly.
If you're on the receiving end of those messages.
Yep. Is that asset setting?
That's asset framing.
Framing.
So we work with we just did a really significant investment with, so another family foundation is the Dalio Foundation. They're actually based in Connecticut. It's a family that did unbelievably well in hedge funds.
Yeah.
They've funded significant things in Hartford. We just
They
partnered
help
with
Connecticut
them.
teachers too, I think.
They're very connected to education.
Yeah.
So we have a partnership we announced about 9 months ago. It's about halfway through the first cycle, and I hope it's the first cycle of these grants, that we partnered with the Dalio Foundation, the City of Hartford, and us, a $10 million program for what are called opportunity youth. And they're defined in the nonprofit sector as young people between the ages of 16 and 24. So it's some school-age people and what you would call young adults that are disconnected from education and employment, right? So that's one way of framing it, and it frames it in the negative, that they're disconnected.
Yep.
So we have started talking about it, and it's not just us. We don't take credit for it, but the people that are working in the space are talking about young people who face barriers to opportunities for education and employment. And
Okay.
there's a difference there. So
Yeah.
it doesn't put the onus on them completely. People have to take responsibility for their own lives. Not kids the age that you're teaching so much as kids 16, 18, young adults in their 20s certainly have some level of responsibility.
Yep.
But there are barriers in our society for lots of people that are insurmountable in some cases. So the grant, the co-funded grant that I'm talking about is to try to remove some of those barriers and to find opportunities through some nonprofit partners in Greater Hartford for young men and women, boys and girls, I don't know what you call a 16-year-old, 24-year-old, young people, youth, that are facing barriers, that they have a desire for education. But it could be, why can't they get to school every day? Because maybe they're the older sibling that has to take care of your student and then another younger sibling and has all those responsibilities because there's a parent that is running as fast as they can to just keep food on the table, right?
Yep.
So we're trying to look at, and there are nonprofits that are working with young people in our community, lots of them, to try to talk through what are those barriers and how, what places supports can be put in place. So a young person who has an eye on becoming a medical tech, a young person who wants to finish high school and maybe go on to higher ed, we can remove some of those barriers and provide extra support for them, mentoring, internship opportunities, things like that.
That's amazing. That's really cool.
It feels good. It's the same reason why you do Friends of Feeney, right?
I was just talking to someone today, actually, Lions Auto, oil change. I go get an oil change, and the mechanic brought me up the street, and he was like, hey, so he started telling me about a pastor who goes to Guatemala to help people, and he kind of connected it to Friends of Feeney. And it was just, and he goes, it feels good to help people, doesn't it? And I was like, man, as soon as I got out of the car, like we knuckle knocked, and it was like a great morning talk at 7:45 on my way to school with, a mechanic that is, you think he just fixes cars or something. You don't, not to look past that, and he was just caring, thoughtful, and just a very, very cool person. And it just, the conversation happens more and more. Just helping people feels good. I mean, you can't put a price on it. You can't put it. Sometimes it takes extra time and effort, but in the long run, it's like the best feeling.
Couldn't agree more.
Right?
It's one of the reasons why I love doing what I'm doing. So I'm not out there necessarily sitting face to face with a young person or a family member, a parent, a grandparent who's going through terrible stuff, and I'm the one who's helping them directly. There are people with a lot more skill and a lot more experience that can do that. But if I'm part of that chain where there's a domino effect and I can shine a spotlight through words and pictures and what I've been doing my whole life, basically communicating and telling a story about great work, I feel like I have a little bit of a sense of it. And what I say to people, like working for the Hartford Foundation, work is still work. There are going to be hard days, right? There are going to be days where you're going to be grumbling under your breath about something that happened, somebody either at your place of employment or somebody you had to deal with that was just impossible that day. But in the end, when you can step back and say, man, it was a terrible day doing something that is making people's lives better, when you realize that, the day really isn't that bad.
Yeah.
A terrible day digging ditches is a terrible day.
Yeah. Always could be worse.
Right. So, and a good day digging ditches is probably a good day when it's 65 degrees out and you're like feeling strong.
In the shade,
and,
hopefully.
You know what I mean? So, anyway, I don't mean to single anyone out, but you understand what I'm trying to say.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, we got, first thing, sponsored by West Hartford Lock. 3 keys that make you great at your job as the Vice President of Communications and Marketing for the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving.
The 3 keys that make me good at my job. Passion for community. A little bit what we were saying about feeling that, in leaning into the feeling of just how great it feels to help somebody's life be a little bit better. That's one. The second thing I think is just my experience in telling stories. So I don't know if the people listening will know or recognize my name or my voice, but I was a broadcast journalist for 20 years, most of the time here. I worked for NBC Connecticut for almost 18 years. And that, at its very core, is what we did, is tell stories about what's happening in the community. Some of the stories are horrible stories. And ultimately, in some ways, that's the reason I left journalism, because it became harder and harder to tell those really, really tragic stories. And I always appreciated, during my time in broadcasting, we have a lot of non-community partners at a television station or any sort of media organization. And I always got so much intrinsic reward out of going out to events and emceeing an event to raise a few bucks for an organization, maybe at the size of your organization, or could be a huge organization like Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation or Boys and Girls Clubs or things like that, big and small, and the feeling I would get from that. And that's kind of how I ended up doing this. But using the skill of being able to tell a story, hearing somebody's story and being able to think through, pick out that thread that will really resonate with people, is, I guess, a skill that I developed over a long period of time doing that. And the other key is that I'm a relatively confident person. And when you are trying to, I wouldn't say convince people, but when you ask, what do, and you can talk about it in a way where you know your stuff and you enjoy the work, I think it just makes people more interested. So if I'm running marketing at any organization, the bottom line is you need to get people interested in what your organization is doing. So I think that's a key to success also.
It's funny that you said that, because I just went to Harvest. Avi Rappaport-Smith owns We Care Computers.
Yeah.
He hosts a happy hour at Harvest. A couple weeks ago, I went, meeting people I didn't know, told them what I do and gave them the card. And some guy goes, "Man, you're really good. You seem really passionate. I want to get involved with you."
That's it.
He's like, "How can I help?" I think his name was Mike, and he was connected with like baseball teams, or how can I get you some tickets or a field trip or a bus trip to take some kids on a and I'm like, let's connect.
Awesome.
He goes, because some people I talk to, they're like, they go through it. He goes, but you had like the storytelling piece and the passion, and you've been mentioning storytelling a lot. So did you ever tell a story, or do you tell stories? Or
So in that kind of formal way, I haven't. I actually somebody tried to recruit me to do one of those, and I started developing one, and then the night got canceled, and I never kind of followed through, and they've never followed through with me. So what I would say is I really like telling other people's stories, including the stories of my family. I'm not sure I like telling stories about myself that much. Like, I've done some stupid stuff and embarrassing stuff, and sometimes it's funny to tell about the embarrassing stuff, because people kind of like you better when they know you're as goofy as they are.
Yep. Yep.
But I think I like telling other people's stories more.
Yeah, I got a story. I told this too. 8 minutes, speak up.
You did it. It was a speak up thing that I was going to do. So you did an 8-minute speak up.
On how in high school, a motivational speaker came to high school, talked to the freshman class. His name was Stubb. He had no arms and no legs. During his talk, he's like, I played basketball. They threw him a ball. He caught it. He dribbled, threw it back. He played football. I was hard to tackle. He played wrestling. He once pinned a 200-pound man. And everyone's like, and here I am. I'm like, how did you pin a 200-pound man? And the kids are like, yeah. He's like, come on stage and I'll show you. So that's the story. And then I go on stage. I get on my knees and I go to push him. He ducks me, flips me over, head over heels. I fall flat on my back, lose breath, look over. 200 of my classmates are like erupting in laughter.
Of course.
So that's like a short version of my 8-minute story. And then during the story, I go and I lunge and give him a push. And then Matt Dix, who does the story, said pause. So pause. And I waited in this pause, and I looked out and scanned the crowd, and they were like,
What happened?
They needed to know. So the pause was really strong and like powerful. And I was like, these guys are on my every word. It was a big rush. So I kind of got addicted to telling stories.
Yeah, I get it.
So,
I get it.
And then back to your other point, Dennis House said the same thing, that when you deliver the news, and sometimes it's not so friendly and nice, or, you know, in the tragic news, how do you deal with that? How do you take that home? So you mentioned that it starts to wear on you.
It does. It does. I give him a lot of credit. He's been doing it a long time. He did it longer. He started earlier than I did. And he's still doing it, and that's great. And there are lots of really great journalists, both broadcast journalists and print journalists and everything in between, multimedia journalists in our community and around the world that are fully committed to it, and I give them huge props, particularly in the climate of today where things are so polarized. And there are people on both sides of any argument that believe that the people that are telling the stories are biased, that they're coming to it with a particular point of view or a decision about how they feel about it. And I can't deny that there are probably some people, and not a tiny percent of people, but a significant number of people that come to it with at least an unconscious bias, if not a conscious bias. It became more and more difficult not to let a bias come in, but I prided myself for 20 years on not letting my opinion about a story, whether I was interviewing a family about a tragic death of a family member who may have been in a bad situation that they had control of whether they were in or not, and what do you do with that? So when you read a story about a terrible tragedy, a young person dying under difficult circumstances at 3 o'clock in the morning, I think it's natural to say, why were they there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yet, is it their fault that somebody wanted to kill them? So we were dealing with, sadly, in local news, you deal with stories like that all the time. And I was both an anchor and a reporter. So when you would have to knock on the door. So they're telling you, the people, I have great respect for all people who work as journalists, but most respect for the people who are out there in the field, the photographers and the reporters, because somebody behind a desk who's sitting in a 68-degree newsroom comfortably says, you need to go knock on the door of the family whose teenager was just killed in a car accident, to ask them how they're feeling. Do you need to ask them how they're feeling?
Yeah, it's a tough spot.
Very tough. And you develop a thick skin doing that. You have to develop a bit of a thick skin, because if you really let yourself be affected by the way that those questions were answered every time, it'd be hard to sleep. It would be hard to go into work the next day. So you develop a way to stay detached from it a little bit, mm-hmm. and try to focus on the facts and the information. But you know, probably the two most difficult stories that I ever had to report on were the Sandy Hook School massacre and the home invasion in Cheshire, where the Pettit family was killed. And in both of those cases, it's hard not to know what side of that you're on. You know, that's not a political thing, really, right? And hard not to. So at the time, Sandy Hook was almost 10 years ago now. And we're just dealing with this in our society again, a tragedy effectively of the same order of magnitude in Texas. In some ways, it's hard to believe that it could have happened again. In some ways, it's like, well, it's just another location for a mass shooting, because there have been literally hundreds of mass shootings since Sandy Hook. So the day of Sandy Hook, I was anchoring the morning news. We started to get information that there had been an incident at a school in Newtown. That's the way a lot of stories start. And then, so I'll take a more innocuous thing. Like you hear, oh, part of 84 is closed. Okay, that could be a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. Somebody could have hit an animal. somebody could have gotten out of their car because their hat blew off and they stopped and there's a domino effect, or it could have been a horrible tragedy. So you wait and you make a decision about when you're going to kind of go on the air with it. If it's of public interest, like a closed highway, you do. Something like this, there's police activity at a school, you're careful about it. And as more and more information came about, we started going on, and then we preempted the Today Show at the time, and then we were doing interviews with people at the scene. And as the picture started getting clearer, I personally had a much harder and harder time as I had to articulate the words that it seems clear that a few, several, more than a dozen, up to 20 first graders were killed there. So I can imagine you would have the same response. Yeah. You were teaching then.
I was on a field trip at the Mattatuck Museum. I was still teaching in Waterbury at the time with my third graders on a field trip. And we get texts from my wife's aunt, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" She thinks she's in Pennsylvania, so it happened in Connecticut. She doesn't know where I am.
Sure.
She's concerned. Just unbelievable. Yeah, I remember where I was for all of them. It's getting to be too much and too overbearing and burden and just scared and anxiety and all these things. Didn't expect to talk about this, but yeah, it wears on me. I'm in my 18th year, 9 years in Waterbury, 9 years here, and it can happen anywhere. And it's showing that it's happening everywhere. So it's scary.
So I think about that, and I have a great deal of respect for teachers that go in the classroom every day. My wife was a classroom teacher for about a dozen years here in Connecticut. And you don't think about you're putting yourself at risk. I don't think you wake up in the day like a police officer might or a firefighter might and think you're putting yourself at risk. But in some ways, you are potentially putting yourself at risk. And it's clearly a societal problem that we haven't figured out how to get our mind around, our arms around, because it's 10 years later, and it
still
effectively the same thing happened again. So that's the part about being a journalist, to going to these places. So when you watch the news, I'll try to put a more positive spin on this. So you watch the news for things that are remarkable, things that are really, really horrible, frankly, or things that are really, really awesome, like a Yukon national championship, right? That draws people to the news. The stuff that I liked the best was the stuff that unless you watched it, you would say, that doesn't sound interesting at all. So I did a lot of feature stories. For when I first came, I think it might have been before we knew each other or right at the first time we met. For the first several years that I was in Connecticut, I did a series called Where in Connecticut is Brad Drazen? And I used to do a story in a different town every week. It wasn't year round, so I would do about 15 or 20 a year, and I ended up doing like half the towns in Connecticut. What did I do? I didn't just show up there. I would do a little research, I'd make some calls, and somebody would say to me, the mayor of Prospect has now been elected to 12 straight terms in office. Well, how does that happen, right? So you think about that, and I went, and I talked to him, and then I find out he eats breakfast at the same restaurant every morning. I'm not sure if he's the mayor still. This was a long time
That's
ago.
crazy.
I suspect that he isn't, okay? But just an example. So you think like, who cares where the mayor of a small town...
Yeah, where did he eat? Because
I can't remember. You know Prospect?
Highland Greens golf course is great, and the basketball, and Big Dipper ice cream. Prospect.
I don't
Shout out
remember.
to Prospect.
All right. So I think about that, and you make that into a story that talks about life in a small town in Connecticut. It could have been in Prospect. It could have been in Guilford. It could have been in Thompson. It could have been in Avon. Like little stories
That's
about
cool.
a slice of life that is just accessible and resonates with people. And so I did so many of those stories about the person. There was a guy that built a scale model of the entire town of Mystic in like his back shed, like all to scale with little tiny, and you interview the guy and it's fascinating. It took years and years, and what drives people for these little tiny passionate things. And I love doing that. So that's the good part, I think, when you can take a really simple thing and give people a window into why things like that are important. Because you think about what you do on the weekends, like, in a way, that's kind of what keeps you going. The little things that you rely on doing to kind of keep your life whole.
Yep, walk my dog to either Doro or Elmwood Bakery.
There you go.
Get a puppuccino for the dog and an egg sandwich for me.
Puppuccino?
Puppuccino.
Talk to me about that.
It's just whipped cream in a cup for the dog. Or a pup cup puppuccino.
I like the puppuccino. Sounds fancier.
Scott Miller's he said he's putting it on the menu at Doro. Coming
Doro?
soon.
Really?
Puppuccino.
All right. Well, we're about to hit. I'm not going to tell stories about myself, but we are about to get a new dog. We had to put our dog down last year, almost 15 years old. So my kids are grown. Our youngest is 18. She has no memory of her life before this dog.
Oh, wow.
It was very sad when he was at the end, but you think about what a gift that is.
Yeah.
Like he was effectively almost as old as her, and so now 6 months have passed. My wife and my daughter in particular are ready. So of course I'm ready too, because I'm like, of course, why not let one do it? So we're gonna go with the puppuccino very soon after we get that
puppuccino.
done. All right.
I played the allergy card. I played, I don't like dogs. We got enough going on. We're busy, but now it's like, where's Barkley?
Of course.
I can't sleep without him. Barkley, come on up. I need that cuddle, that
So
warmth.
he's named after your style of play on the basketball court?
Exactly. Yep.
I get it.
My wife's favorite player too.
Is that true?
Yeah. So she scored 1,000 at Southern.
Really?
I met her. I told her to speak up about that too. 8 minutes of how I met my wife, how she hated me till she loved me.
I think I have the same story too. I think a lot of us have that story.
Yeah. She was like the scholar athlete, and I was like the troublemaker, and our rooms were separated by this thin wall, and I'd bang on it. I like you. Why don't you like me?
Really?
That was my pickup line. And
You were smooth.
Smooth as butter. So Barkley, Charles Barkley. That's my guy.
That's awesome. I like it.
So, the Labradoodles, and we're hoping that he sticks around, because we talk about, she's like, already, I can't imagine him not being around,
No,
and he's
it's
only
hard.
like 5.
Good.
And then, our girls are going to high school. So we have 4 years left, and I have twin girls, and they're like, it's just going to be us and Barkley.
Yeah.
And we're hoping, that's what we're hoping, Barkley sticks around as long as possible. But you brought up hoop. How's your hoop game?
It's resting. It's resting quietly. So we played together for a while.
Yeah.
Many years. And it got to the point. So how old are you now?
43.
So it was about at that point, my early 40s.
Oh, yeah, I'm
started
feeling it.
thinking about, how is this going to end? Is this going to end with me being wheeled off in a stretcher or somebody carrying me away? And I'd think about it, and I'd be like, all right, I have a 9 o'clock game. Let's lace them up and go and do it. And I never regretted going, because you feel that great sense of, even if you've been beaten down, it's still a good feeling, right? At the end. Then once I got to like 45, every single time I played, whether it was a game or pickup, I came away hurt in some way, shape, or form. Tweaked knee, lower back, elbow to the jaw, and somebody else I played against was hurt. So that's when I had looked at myself in the mirror and I thought, I don't think I'm a value add to this game. Not for me, and not for the people that have to play against me.
The best story ever. Like when I saw, I'm like, that's Brad. He's on TV. Is this camera on TV? Is this true? Does it add height and weight, or does it take away height and weight?
In my case, it made me look kind of like Wally Serbiak, like big broad shoulders, like larger than life, like 6'8".
Yeah,
Not
on the
really.
screen?
Not really. No.
I was going to say, because I
No.
felt like looking on the
Normally-
screen, I felt you were bigger on the court than seeing
Yeah.
you on TV.
You
but-
wouldn't know. You wouldn't know how tall somebody was for
All right,
sure.
the height definitely
You
got me.
definitely wouldn't know the height because you can go if you bumped into a major national media figure. You might be shocked at them being. They might be like 5'6". You would never like a man.
So height threw me off.
You wouldn't. A height you wouldn't know. Generally, it makes you. It makes you look a little beefier than you are, but it doesn't mean that you look stronger. You just kind of. It just. You can't hide a lot of the flaws.
And then your teammate's shooting a foul shot, and you're like, or my teammate actually, you fouled him, but you're not happy about the foul.
No, I've
You
never
took out
fouled
your
anyone in my
mouthpiece.
entire career.
You're going, man, a lot of, and I'm like, this is the nice guy Brad from TV, going bananas right now, and I was like, this is amazing. This is, everyone has that. I got a technical, I kicked the ball, and some people are like, Feeney, aren't you a school teacher? But you're like, not at this 5 minutes.
Not at this moment.
Yeah, I want this ball to go in the hoop really bad. You're deterring that. You're trying not to, and then the refs add a whole new angle. They think, I never get any calls. Greg, you know who I'm talking about, ref. Ty, run a better league. You just want the call, or you don't think you get the call, but no, I was amazed that you were like.
I would.
And you were diving on the floor, elbowing people, and people were like, "Watch out for Brad. He's too rough. He's boxing out."
Yeah, I perhaps could have dialed back the competitiveness a little bit. Not my strong suit. I'd like to think that I've gotten a little bit better about it, but my wife and some of my friends might say when we play like a word game or something at the house. You're
still into it?
Yeah, I'm still pretty into it. I'm pretty competitive playing golf. I don't like when things go the wrong way. There are no refs, though, to get mad at. So it's mostly getting mad at myself.
Yeah.
But I definitely jawed at some refs. I got a few tees. I bump into some of the refs from now, 10 years ago and more, and they go like this. I remember. My favorite thing, though, when I would commit, let's call it, I didn't argue the foul every time, because sometimes I legitimately caught somebody with an elbow and I'm like, oh, that wasn't good. But you put your hand straight up and they'd get a call and they make the basket. And my thing, I would go up to them while they're in the line. I'm like, are you okay? Do you need a doctor or anything? You must be really hurt.
Yeah.
When it was just
a little
brush
one of
their
those.
shirt and they did the Kyle Lowry
Floppers.
total flop. Marcus Smart is good at that.
Yeah.
His
Manu
body
Ginobili
would
was
fly.
like the
Manu Ginobili, yeah, I like
master
that.
of the flopper.
Right.
Using his soccer skills.
Oh, my
Smart hits the deck a lot.
Smart hits the deck. He spends about a third of the time on the floor.
I don't know how. What is he? He must ice bath every night, or
I don't know how those guys do it.
he hits the deck hard.
Yeah. So my basketball career is in the rearview mirror, and it is much prettier, the way I see it now, than it probably was in reality. Starting from when I was 8, when I was like the man, as far as I know, and all the way up through high school, and then playing with the weekend warrior types.
Yes, I loved it.
Yeah.
JCC.
It's fun.
I was like, that's Brad. Such a nice guy on TV.
Not on
Why is he yelling at everybody right now? In wrestling.
Come on, why aren't you hustling? As I dive for a ball and blood is pouring out of my elbow.
But in the 43 hit me, I'm hurting. Like you said, I just went to the chiropractor, Dr. Rick over here on the way here, because I have a game tonight, actually. 8 o'clock, JCC, Spring League. Scott McGilpin, you know Scott?
Of course, lefty. Crafty lefty.
Yep. Episode 22, he's on, and episode 50.
Oh, he's top 25.
He came on twice. He was 22 and 50.
McGilpin did?
Yeah. And Ty runs
But
the
he
league.
is he's like an inside friend of Feeney.
Yeah,
He's like
started on the
friend
court.
with a capital F.
Yes.
Not a
Yes.
lowercase. I had this thing I was going to say.
How's your-
Tonight. So my recommendation for your fans of Friends of Feeney and the podcast, if you ever get an opportunity to go watch the basketball league at the JCC, run the other direction.
Yes.
It is the worst spectator sport in history. It's like people are running in quicksand.
It's painful. It's halftime. The score is like 16-12. You're like, you played 20 minutes of basketball and the score is 16-12?
Right.
Bunch of grown men out here couldn't throw the ball
it's
in.
good stuff, though.
No, it's
good
bad.
stuff.
But it's fun. I'm going to
course.
play for a while, but again, 43's hurting.
I get
Again,
it.
the knee, the back.
Yeah, that's it.
Put on some weight. Just on a weekend, like Memorial Day weekend, I'm feeling like a little bloated right now.
Shouldn't have had that 5th hot dog.
Right? So then Memorial Day, I don't know if you could see my nose. I go to for the fire, I go to break a twig.
Yeah.
Snapped it over my knee. It snapped up and hit me in the nose. So I beat myself up already. Gave myself a bloody nose. So tough day. No, speaking of JCC, we got to show you the greatest video of all time. Well, in my eyes, Andy Katz. I'm at the JCC. This is when I first meet Lauren, and you and Andy Katz say something like, and I'm like, hey, Andy, I know you're on college basketball. I love basketball. Can we do a fake fun interview about me playing? You know, I played in Waterbury. I played at the JCC. He goes, all right. That's all I tell him. And I play at the JCC. I miss a lot of layups. And you go like, hey, we're going to cut into a zoom to an out. And, like, you say that, and he understands what you're saying because you're talking the jargon. And I'm going to try to find it. But it's just, like, it's hilarious where it's just, like, spoofs me the whole time.
This guy named Feeney. I'd heard about him in the Police Athletic League. A little bit of a unique kind of style to his game. He's got, he's good defensive skills, decent rebounder. Needs to work on his shot, but we saw a lot of potential. And I'm now with Feeney. During your preparation, to try to crack the D League, what did you think you needed to work on the most?
I'm biting him with a laughter so hard.
Definitely,
He's like, D-League.
Bad habit, missing a lot of layups. So I could just get the ball in the basket. I think that'd be very helpful to me.
Yeah, we're going to put that link on there. But it's a minute long. It's hilarious out. I miss a lot of layups.
I do remember that. I was the cameraman, the producer.
Yes.
And it was a really in-depth interview.
Yes. It was deep. I got to the bottom of all my flaws. He's like, you got to start making layups and then incrementally get farther away from the hoop. And I was like,
strategy.
Yeah. I was like, ooh. But as soon as he said you're trying to crack the D League, I go, oh, I bit my lip so hard because I was just going to start laughing. That was the word of the day. We did like Pee Wee's Playhouse. Anytime someone said layup, everyone had to yell at the podcast so layups are still haunting me. And that was November 2012.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I met Lauren Lauren hosted a yoga class, or maybe did the yoga. I don't know.
Probably did the yoga.
I said, hey, I teach in Waterbury. And she was like, you seem like a really great person, great teacher. Like, contacted someone in human resources. I never answer the house phone. Ever. We don't even have a house phone anymore. But when I had it, I just grabbed it, and it was like, hey, this is Lauren Drazen. And I was like, I put in a good word for you, and you have an interview. And I was also working with my neighbor, who was Dr. K. So he was the retired principal. Yeah. So it's like, but you need that sometimes, even if it's a stranger or that positive push to the encouragement. Like, you're going to be great in West Hartford. Go out and get it. So Lauren, if you're listening, Lauren, please tell Lauren it was instrumental to me being in West Hartford. Without me getting into the West Hartford schools, there'd be no Friends of Feeney. And just that small moment and that small interaction with Lauren, I'm still grateful and so appreciative. It means so much. And from a yoga event, I talk with you and Katz. It was just like a great day. And I answered that phone that day. Dr. K was my neighbor, and he was like, for 5 years, I'm like, Dr. K, hey, I want to teach here. I drive to Waterbury. It's 35 minutes away. He's like, sorry. I was like, I'll mow your lawn. I'll paint your house. He's like, sorry. And then one day, like 5 years later, he's like, I got good news and bad news. Good news, I can get you an interview. Bad news, I'm retiring. I was like, I'll take it. And then with that encouragement and Lauren even was like, they're going to try to give you, this step. You go in and you're confident. Say that you want this step. And I was like, oh, wow. And even gave me the confidence to do that in the meeting. So Lauren was... I'm so glad. Can't thank her enough.
She'll love to hear that story.
Yeah, it means a lot. I think about that all the time. I'm glad you're here so I could tell her to think. You'll tell her that I said thank you. Yep. Maybe she'll watch this. but it was an amazing person. And so come to find out, she was known as the best Chinese teacher in Hall and did all these wonderful trips.
Yeah. She did a lot of travel with students. It was
and currently no longer there.
She's no longer there. She's not a classroom teacher any longer. She was at the Hall program. She started the Hall Chinese program.
Yeah.
She started the Chinese program in West Hartford. So the first year, she taught at both high schools. Then the program got big enough with the second kids coming up, kids going from Chinese 1 to Chinese 2, and then 8th graders coming in, that they hired a second teacher. So she only taught at Hall. Maybe she taught at both schools for 2 years. And when she left, I think the number was something like, I don't want to overstate it. There were like 300 students at Hall in the Chinese program, which is pushing 20% of the student body.
Yeah.
And she had started it, and there wasn't that much more to grow. And she had started doing other things. The travel that she started, the travel business that she started, the travel that she started with the students became a travel business that she did for community members and adults on the side.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
And so she was doing that. And sometimes you need a change. I'm a perfect example of that. I changed and did something different. Now, her travel business, because of COVID, went from rising quickly to bottom dropping out. And so she had 4 trips planned in 2020. 2 to China, 1 to Africa, and 1 to Europe that she was leading. All were canceled within about, by the time we got 6 weeks into the pandemic, it was clear that we weren't going to be traveling very far, certainly not overseas. So that has not come back. But she does educational consulting now. She works with families and trying to help kids tell their story to get into college.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I'm what she calls her unpaid intern. So I help review some of the writing. I actually do interview prep with kids.
So is that a part of the college application now?
Oh, yeah.
Interviews?
A lot of schools do
Face-to-face
alumni
or
interviews.
Zoom?
A lot of them run Zoom now. So sometimes in the before time, as I like to say, before March of 2020, sometimes they'd be in person. You'd schedule them. I've actually done, I'm trying to think because I do them for my alma mater. That's my wife's selling point. Like I have been doing alumni interviews for my alma mater for a long time. And so I kind of know the drill from the interviewer's perspective and try to give the young person insight into what the person across the table or on the screen might be thinking. So I used to meet somebody at Starbucks or something like that. I'm trying to think. I don't think I've done an in-person one since COVID started. We've been doing them online.
Wow.
So she's doing
Dartmouth
great.
or UCLA?
Dartmouth.
Nice.
Dartmouth. Yep.
Yeah, my football coach in high school, my favorite high school coach, my favorite teacher of all time was Mrs. Jarrell, elementary school, but my second and very close is Dave Krill, Mr. Krill, football coach. He did pole vaulting for Dartmouth and had the Dartmouth stuff up. So one of my favorite
Very
teachers.
cool.
Dartmouth
Awesome.
connection. All right, and being a teacher, 9 years in Waterbury, 9 years in West Hartford. Mrs. Jarrell was my favorite elementary school. I want to say David Krill. And they just honored, he was a tennis coach too. They just honored Wilby High School courts are now the Dave Krill courts. So,
that's such a nice thing. What a great legacy to leave.
Yeah. So who's your favorite teacher? Do you have a favorite teacher?
My favorite teacher. So I would say, I think I can think of 2 teachers that had a significant impact on my life in particular. One was a middle school, I'm trying to think if it was 8th or 9th grade, social studies teacher, Mr. Kelly, who was just so passionate about, I wasn't even that interested in the subject. I feel like it was probably American history, 9th grade is my recollection. He just lit up those lights. He figured out how to talk about, you think about history for like a 14-year-old, put it into context for me maybe, why should I care about it now? And he could just do it. He did it, and he brought it every day. And I came to find out that he also worked on the side because teachers have to hustle.
Yep.
He had a side hustle. He worked on the grounds crew at a golf course. And sometimes, once the weather got nice, like in May, he'd go work on the grounds crew at the golf course from 6 to 8.
Before school?
And then go teach. And when I found that out after the fact, I was like, I thought he was great before this. But when I realized he was going as fast as he could before school and then running up after school, and of course he had a family and everything, just the best, really good. And then I had I had a professor in college who was really, so a lot of what I do in my life now is write. When I was a broadcast journalist, I did a lot of writing. I do a significant amount of writing now as a communication and marketing person. And when I went to college, I wasn't a great writer. Whatever, I never really got turned on to it. And there was a professor at Dartmouth who has since passed away. His name is Peter Saccio. He was a theater professor, but taught plays as literature. He was like the Shakespeare expert. And I took his class, and then I took another class, and he said to me after the first paper I handed in, he goes, "This really wasn't very good. The ideas are pretty good, but your writing isn't good." And this is like already, I feel like it was like end of sophomore year, so I was like almost halfway through, and finally somebody said to me, "You're not so good at this." So he said, "I'll make a deal with you. If you hand your paper in 3 days before it's due, I will turn it around and get it back to you the following day with my comments, and then you can hand it in with my input."
Wow.
And I took him up on that, and basically I got like a master class in writing. So not only were my grades better, the reality is I was just better at it, because first of all, he was forcing me to write that first draft.
Yep.
Like you can remember in college, you're like, "Oh man, the paper's due in 8 hours and I got a blank screen.
Yeah.
I better go."
Been there
right?
a lot.
So I couldn't, I made a commitment to him. He made a commitment to me. We fulfilled the commitment, and I did better. But the most important thing is, and I'm grateful to him, I do think about him a lot. He really got me to feel confident in being able to have an idea and be able to convey it through my writing. So that's
awesome.
the answer to that teacher question.
Great. Are you published in anything, anywhere?
It's an interesting question.
Magazines?
I mean, I don't think so, because
current magazines, new paper? I don't know.
No, I haven't done a lot like essay writing. I think a lot of, you can find some stuff that I did. There's so much stuff online. Like, there's some goofy stuff of me online. There's some pretty good stuff, pretty good stories that I did, but not published. No.
Any aspirations to write a book? No?
But basically, now that I've done this, I really don't have any more brass rings to grab for. The Friends of Feeney podcast is like,
you hit it big.
it's like the cherry on top.
This is it.
What
This
do
is
I do
end all,
now?
be all.
What do I do now? I just go home and
Put your feet up.
put my feet up, and
Fulfilled.
that's it. Say, fuck, it's good. What am I going to do the next 30 years of my life?
All right, we got Crazy Questions, sponsored by Donut Crazy. But first, I just want to shout out our wonderful day that we had yesterday at the Memorial Day Parade. We gave out poppies in honor of Ella Niski, I should know. It's my great aunt, Aunt Ella. She lived to be 100. Her birthday was on Halloween. She was the VFW Woman of the Year in Naugatuck. She was the Mother of the Year. She was she worked at the VFW, and she loved parades and dressing up for holidays and handing out poppies for Veterans Day and Memorial Day. So she just passed away this year. So it was honored to pass out with her name on them.
Nice.
We passed out 300 of them. So thank you, Ella.
Awesome.
And then we honored Ben Cooper. Ben Cooper served with the 45th Division, also known as the Thunderbirds, from 1942 to 45. Great story, West Hartford guy.
Amazing guy.
Yeah, so cool. He loved, his daughter kept yelling at him, "Ben, put down the camera," because he wanted us to take pictures of everything.
Right.
And then I guess my mother sat and rode with Ben's daughter and Ben. We put a lounge chair in the back of a pickup, strapped him in, and he just waved. He was supposed to be waved. She's like, "You need to wave, Ben." And he's like, I'm too busy taking pictures. I want to take pictures. It was really cool.
Excellent.
I got his card. He's just an amazing human. Our mission's aligned. He is anti-bullying. He is, including everyone, being a good friend. Our motto is be a good friend. Pick up trash that's not yours. Hold the door for someone. Give a compliment. And be charitable. If you're not giving to Friends of Feeney, you can give to the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, Johnny's Jog, the Bridge Family Center, and Food Share are all the ones that are really near and dear to my heart. So
awesome.
Being a good friend. Ben Cooper was a good friend, and he's 100 years old.
Yeah.
And we got him on top of a pickup, on top of a lounge chair, like a nice leather chair.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. So thank
Amazing.
you, Ben Cooper, and thank you, Richard Cooper, and the whole Cooper family for sharing and allowing your father to march with us and being our guest of honor. It was an amazing event.
That's
I got
fantastic.
burnt yesterday.
I can see that.
I wore a
They
bucket hat.
have something for that. You can put stuff on your skin.
Really?
And it's a new thing. It's a new thing. Yeah.
I just so excited. Woke
I'll
up
send
early.
you an email with all the information about it.
I need directions for that too. So bad. I'm not
Open bottle, squeeze, rub on skin. There you go.
kind of tan too.
I was outside a lot this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was
It's
your
good.
weekend?
It was pretty good. My family is away. They were supposed to come back, and they got stuck in Europe with COVID. So they didn't come back as quickly as they were supposed to. So I was solo this weekend, but I ended up spending some time with friends. I did a solo barbecue last night.
Nice.
And I decided not to be sad about it. I had some really good chicken sausage in the fridge. I had some peppers and onions. I threw them on the grill, made like a sriracha ketchup thing. I bought some corn on the cob. And I'm like, it's Memorial Day. It's 5 o'clock. It's beautiful out. I'm going to go fire up the grill, and I'm going to do it. And I did it, and I was like, I'm damn glad I did.
Nice. That's really cool.
I didn't share it with anyone, though.
You're like,
well, I've shared it with you now.
yeah. Hey, I love it. Thank you for sharing. Sausage burger, right? Sausage.
No, chicken sausage.
Chicken sausage.
Chicken sausage. It's good.
All right.
A little spicy. Yeah, it was very good.
In a bun like a burger, or
Nope. I just put it on a plate with the vegetables and eat it with a knife and fork.
Gotcha.
You could put it in a bun. I'd rather eat, instead of eating 2 sausages with 2 buns, I'd rather eat the 4 sausages and leave the buns out.
Yep.
It makes me feel like I'm being healthy. I know eating this 3rd and 4th sausage probably isn't the healthiest thing, but it made me feel good. I'll tell you that.
Any beverages to go with this meal?
I had 1 cold malted beverage.
Nice.
And then I drank some seltzer.
Nice.
It's all good.
All right, crazy
we got?
question. Sponsored by Donut Crazy
Okay.
over there on Farmington Avenue. Do you have a favorite donut at Donut Crazy?
I'm not a donut guy, but I'm very supportive of Donut Crazy in concept.
Nice.
But I'm not a donut guy. It's the same reason I don't eat the buns with the sausage. Same idea.
Gotcha. I know. We're going to. What minute are we for Donut Crazy? Crazy questions. Just shy of an hour. Man.
Wow.
See, 60 minutes with Feeney.
60
feeling?
minutes of Feeney.
Is the camera and the lights too much for you? Are you used to this?
I didn't even know there was a camera. How you doing?
All right. I don't know if this podcast stuff is new to you. This camera work and stuff.
It's very, yeah.
Your distance to the mic is good.
I'm not intimidated.
All right. Crazy questions.
Okay.
There's stuff on the back, this guy says. Oh, all right. So I told him, these are my students, 3rd graders. And I told them, how we played basketball and how you're a reporter. And so give them some things to ask questions.
Okay.
And I make sure they write with a capital letter at the beginning, proper punctuation. So how old are you?
I'm 53 years old.
What's your favorite color?
Green.
Would you rather be the fastest or the strongest person in the world?
Strongest.
Nice. And his favorite news report was on April 1st, and it showed a prank that showed that they were flying penguins.
I like it.
You probably did that bit.
I did. I never saw the flying penguins, but I'd like to.
A lot of how old are you? So we'll skip over those
right.
again. We already got it.
Well, I'm a little older than the last time you asked the question.
53 in a couple more seconds. Do you have a pet? Oh, we talked about that.
We on the rise.
Do you know what kind of dog?
When I'm your 57th,
Yep.
also, I think by then we will have a dog.
All right.
We have one in mind that may be coming up from the south in the next week or so.
Nice.
We're hoping we get him.
Would you rather be a paper or a rock?
Huh. Paper.
Nice.
More utility with paper, I think.
True. Do you have kids?
I do. 3 kids.
3 kids. What kind of car do you have?
I drive a Subaru Outback.
And what's your favorite day of the week?
Friday.
Nice. Yes. Teacher's favorite time? Friday at 3:30. Teacher's least favorite time? Sunday at 8 p.m. What's your favorite color?
It's still green.
Still green. Would you rather be a panda or a wolf?
Wow. Oh, that's a tough one. Pandas' lives are good, man.
Yeah.
The giant panda,
they
you know
hang
what
in the
they
shade
do.
a lot.
They hang in the shade,
Bamboo.
and they procreate.
That's living.
They mostly sleep, though. They eat the bamboo, they hang out with their people, and it's not a terrible gig being a giant panda. And they're cute.
There they are. All right, I like that.
I like panda.
All right, I'm going to be a panda when I grow up. When did you join NBC?
2000, January of 2000.
Would you rather be a gummy bear or a bear?
Well, if you're a gummy bear, you're like gone real quick. So I think I got to choose bear in that one.
All right, knock, knock.
Who's there?
Pencil.
Pencil who?
Forget this joke. It's pointless.
All right, that's good.
Pretty
That's
good,
good. I
pretty
like
good.
it. I like it.
All right. Again, how many
That's
children?
third grade humor?
Third grade.
That's high level third grade humor.
Yeah.
All right.
Where do otters come from?
Is this a joke?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Outer space. Is Mr. Feeney your friend?
Yes, he is.
Oh, then I did say, why did you marry a Chinese woman?
I didn't marry a Chinese woman. I married a woman who became a Chinese teacher.
Yep.
But if she had been a Chinese woman, I probably would have married her anyway if she was the same person.
Yeah, because I think just kids automatically assume
Yep.
she was a Chinese teacher.
Yeah,
Do you
Yeah.
know Mr. Feeney a little bit?
a little bit.
A little bit.
I've injured him a couple times. He's limped away from our interactions.
Would you rather be a reporter or a fundraiser? And
That's
I
interesting.
try to explain what you did.
At this point, I feel like I'm a little bit of both. So I get to say I get to do both. So I'm greedy. I'll take both.
Deal.
I'm not choosing.
Do you know Chinese?
I don't. Only a little bit of food here and there. I know what's important, you know?
What's your favorite number?
Oh, that's a good question. I always was number 10 if I could be, or number 20 in baseball and basketball. So I was a big Sugar Ray Richardson fan growing up from the Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
He was 20. I did not have any a game like him at all because he was about quick and handles, and as you know, I was neither quick nor did I have handles. But so my favorite number I'll say is 10, but I was mostly number 20 in both baseball and
Nice.
basketball.
Are you a Knicks fan?
I've been a
Let's go.
lifelong Knicks fan.
Another reason I like you.
Oh man, it's frustrating.
It's rough.
It is rough.
It's like, can't get much lower. All right, so how old are you? How many kids do you have? Do you know Chinese? What's your favorite car?
My favorite car?
Favorite car. If you could drive any car in the world.
I don't know. I'm not a car guy. I'd like to take all the money I'd spend on the nicest car and travel around the world with that money instead. I'm good with my Subaru Outback if you can tell me that I get to go to Asia this month and Africa next month and Europe the month after.
Everyone's like, do you see that car? It's a Q45. I'm like, I don't know. As long
Right.
as it gets me, I'm with you. I'd much rather travel.
Just get me where I'm going.
Would you rather have infinity life or infinity money?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to say infinity money, and I'd like to think if I did, I would share. I mean, if it was really infinite, you could really solve a lot of problems.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's something you could share much more than an infinite life.
True. I'm with you on that one. Would you rather be 100% of Instagram or 100% of Twitter?
Oh my God. I'm not an Instagram guy. I'm not a huge Twitter guy either. I'm going to say Instagram because it's a little more current.
Nice.
It's
nice.
kind of on the rise.
Would you help Mr. Feeney in a fundraiser?
Of course I would.
Yes. Do you play basketball?
I would say I'm retired.
Do you use chopsticks a lot?
I do use chopsticks a lot. I've gotten pretty good at it. If you can lift up a single grain of rice with chopsticks, You've done it.
I could catch a fly.
Can you? You like wax on, wax off? Nice.
Did you go to Wolcott School?
I did not go to Wolcott School.
Do you live in a mansion?
Nope.
Do you have kids? How do you know Mr. Feeney? Did you go to Wolcott School? How did you become a fundraiser?
How did I become it? By working hard and paying attention to people who taught me things, and getting a little bit of luck, little bit lucky.
And why are you the vice president of communications? This is
I would
Anna.
say
Good
this. I
question.
would say the same thing. It's a little bit of luck and a little bit of paying attention and trying hard.
What was your scariest report as a reporter?
Ooh. So I was involved in a developing shootout with police before I came to Connecticut. Try to make this as quick as possible. So there's a call that comes over, a police scanner, there's some sort of disturbance. There's a cop. This is in northern Michigan where I was working before we moved to Connecticut. It was probably 1998, as I'm going to guess, maybe 99. And I'm out going on another story, and they say, before you go to that other story, we hear there's some sort of disturbance. There's a guy on his porch arguing with a police officer. I get there, and that's exactly what it is. One man on his porch arguing with a police officer. But the man has a long gun. He's holding a long gun. So I was the third person there on scene. And when I called back to tell them, using, 98, 99, do you remember what a cell phone looked like in 98 or 99?
Yeah, was it the big
It
one?
was a bag phone.
Oh.
It was in like
Yep.
a leather case, and you couldn't take it out of the car. It was plugged into the lighter of the car.
Yep.
So I said, this doesn't look like something we should leave. And I'm there, and I don't want to overstate it, 50 feet from the house while they're talking, close, very close. And as it gets longer and longer, more police arrive, and they start moving me back, and there's no other media there. Nothing's really happened yet. And it lasts a couple hours, and by the end, I'm with a camera, I'm on my own, I'm behind the police line, but I found like a hedge so I could shoot what was going on, and it ended with the guy firing at the police. And he killed one officer, and they shot him multiple times. It was crazy.
Oh, wow.
So I was there from the beginning, and do I think I was in the line of fire like a war correspondent? No, I'm not going to make revisionist history
Long
here.
rifle, anything in.
But it was very disconcerting. And when I told my wife, and we had a 1-year-old son at the time, she's like, "Are you sure you want to be there?" And I said, "I think I kind of need to be. Like, this is what we do." It was crazy. It was crazy to see it all unfold. A lot of times for broadcast journalists, and you get there kind of for breaking news, you kind of get there after something has happened. I was there before it happened,
Yeah.
which was crazy.
Did your footage air?
Yeah. It aired all
Wow.
over the place. Yeah.
That's good.
And I was not good at shooting.
Shaky?
Yeah, pretty shaky. Pretty shaky.
But was it the only footage?
Yeah, it was the only TV footage of it.
Nice.
It was a big deal there, like you can imagine. I mean, when police are killed in the line of duty, it's a serious situation. And this was like point blank. Like it was very intense. So that was a very good question, and it led, this should be your source for questions. This kid, whoever it is,
Yeah.
was
Christian.
Very good question.
Good
Stimulates a good little
Good kid.
nugget for the podcast.
Do you like pasta or hamburgers?
Pasta over hamburgers.
Favorite song?
Huh. Favorite song? I'm going to say, I'll do a little plug for my son, Max Drazen, who is a budding recording artist, and he just had his debut single released on Friday.
Oh, come on.
It's
Yeah.
called Let Me Down Slow.
We're going to
So
add that link to the podcast.
Add the link to the podcast. Max Drazen on Spotify, Let Me Down Slow.
Sing and write the song,
Yep.
sing, perform.
Yep, both. So he's my favorite artist now, and that's my favorite song. And then when he releases his next song, guess what my favorite song is going to be? That song.
Max Drazen.
Yep,
All right.
that's his real name.
We got to have a
Max Drazen, high school class of 2018.
Nice. We got to
worked at JCC. Ty knows him.
Okay.
He worked at Sports Jams for two years.
We'll have like NPR Tiny Desk. He'll come in here and play the music.
All right.
We'll do that.
I'm in. I'll talk to
Couple
him.
more.
All right, couple more.
That's too much.
Now we have an hour 40 with Feeney. That's what
Hour
this is
40.
becoming.
We're pushing it. Boom, boom, boom. All right, good. So, last question. Favorite restaurant?
See, you don't want to put me in that box. I've lived in West Hartford
know.
for more than 20 years.
Maybe not in
There's
West
lots of answers that I could give that are going to make one person happy,
Yep.
and other people say, next time Drazen's come into our restaurant, they're maybe not going to get the service that we. So,
Ronnie Newton said
all
the
right.
same thing.
So, okay, I will answer the question as far from West Hartford as I can.
Deal.
So my son lives in LA now, the recording artist. We went out to visit him. He had been brought to a very famous Japanese restaurant and sushi place called Nobu.
Okay.
So last time we were out there, I went there. They have two locations, one in the city,
yep.
and then one right on the ocean in Malibu. And we had lunch at Nobu in Malibu looking out on the Pacific Ocean. It's hard to beat that one.
Jeez. Yeah,
Flight of sake, 3 different kinds of sake, and like crazy sushi, like stuff. You look at it and you're like, it's like art. Am I supposed to eat this? And they're like, oh yeah, just eat it.
that's awesome.
So that's it. I'm not going to offend any of the restaurant owners.
How much was the bill?
And you do not want to know that.
How many people ate?
There was me, my wife, and my son. They actually told me they weren't going to tell me how much it was. They had already arranged with it because they thought I might start sweating bullets.
I'll tell you after, at least.
Yeah, they did tell me after, and it didn't matter.
Nobu, yeah, it's so cool. I heard about the one in the city a lot.
Yeah, it's
There's
great.
also one in Malibu. Very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Max. All right, so 4 people dead or alive. In addition to your Max and your wife being there, who would you invite to this dinner? 4 people dead or alive.
That's very easy. I'd have to invite my family. I have 3 kids, so my wife and 3 kids.
Done.
That's done. I know that's a.
So we did crazy questions. We did your 3 keys. We chatted about your being a reporter, your basketball game, your soon-to-be dog owner, Max, musician, your wonderful wife. It was really cool to sit and chat with you. I really appreciate it. Knicks fan. Man, this is great. Any closing remarks?
I love what you're doing. It's great. A lot of people have ideas about, what I might do if I really had the time, or I'll do it someday. You didn't do that. You just did it. And if there were more people that did that, the need for it would be less, right?
Yeah.
So I give you huge props. And this is a fun part of what you're doing. Try to, grab people's interest in different ways.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
So it's good on you. And I'm glad that even though I was 53, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Dennis House was 25. Is that
Come on,
bad?
that's not right.
Kenny Mayne, like 33.
All right, Kenny
Seth
Mayne.
Wickersham.
I could take Kenny Mayne. I don't mind when Kenny Mayne beats me by 25, 30 slots. That's all good.
But Dennis House.
He's my neighbor. He's a good guy. He's a friend of mine. I would tell him. In fact, maybe I'll text him now and say, I can't believe you were 30 slots ahead of me.
That's hilarious. He's a great guy. I saw him at the parade. He was our guest celebrity trivia host during podcast 50 and asked the sports questions.
Oh, so he's been on twice.
Twice now.
I just screwed up your camera.
Oh, it's over. It's over. And then, thank you. I just got this wonderful thank you card where you're raising money for a family that lost their mother to brain cancer. And this was from the family. I won't read it, but just doing what you can, when you can. When there's a need, we're helping out. There's a little boy going through some things with surgeries and medical stuff. We're going to help the family. And again, I use this avenue. I met with Dave at Direct Line Media. We did a Behind the Brand. And on the way out, I go, hey, can I ask the questions? And here we are, 53 episodes later.
Awesome.
Thank you, Direct Line Media. Thank you, Owen. Thank you, Dave. Thanks again to Weehaw Roasting and Brewing. Thanks to Brad Drazen. He's the man, number 53. On 3, we'll say, be a good friend. 1, 2, 3. Be a good friend.